Hello and welcome everybody to the Truth Lab. I'm Alex Landry. This is episode number 6. Today's guest is Charles Frohman. And for those new to the Truth Lab, the purpose of the Truth Lab is to highlight, listen, learn, and understand truth seekers' unique truth-seeking journeys, how their truth-seeking journeys began, progressed, where they are now, and going. With that all being said, how are you doing today, Charlie? And how about you share a little bit about your background to get this podcast off to an awesome start?
Thank you, Alex. Good to see you. And of course, for those that don't know, Alex and I worked together at a health freedom organization, which was really a good time. And I was really appreciative about getting to meet this guy, Mr. Landry. He's a tour de force. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And basically, health freedom lobbyist is one of the things that I am, and certainly my life and my truth journey built to where I am today. And it's not just lobbying, but it's also disrupting the health benefits and payment world. So, my niche, I think, is pretty powerful in the health improvement space, with all due humility. And, whenever you're ready, I can go into how I think I got to here. But, currently that's why folks know me is advocacy for health freedom, and then disruption in the actual health benefits market for families and small businesses. And then I'm also a podcast host like you are.
Well, I think that was great, Charlie. And obviously, I'm privy to you have over 30 years experience working in government affairs. So how did that start? Maybe if you could summarize that. Weren't you a staffer for Ron Paul?
Well, not for Ron Paul, but yeah, I was a government major at William and Mary, the second oldest college in America, where Thomas Jefferson went, one of those wisdom seekers who was a leader of our country, the type that Plato wanted, lovers of wisdom. If in
Exactly.
fact that's the truth, that history, I hope it is, but we never know since everything is up for grabs now when it comes to history, right?
You want me to
Um,
quick, Charlie? I have it just how mankind will never see an end of trouble until lovers of wisdom come to hold political power, or the holders of power become lovers of wisdom.
yeah, and when you and I spoke before this recording, that definitely resonated with me because I think it is the times where lovers of wisdom need to step out and take their place in leadership to save this existence on Earth. But that was my major in college, government. Not particularly because I loved government, really selfishly because it was easy, and I had other interests during college apart from academics. And it was just sort of a lark. After I left college, I went to DC with a friend and did temp work as college graduates are wont to do, and just farmed my resume around Capitol Hill to see who would hire me. A lot of interviews, a lot of resumes, and finally I got hired and just rose through the ranks by luck and persistence. And this is right around the time of Hillary Care in the early 90s. And, some older legislative assistant just dumped healthcare on me. He didn't want to be bothered with it. And it was fortuitous. And, I was just curious, always have been, and learning about healthcare. I learned about personal empowerment as the alternative to government top down Hillary Care. And that led me to some pretty cool places and opportunities in the 90s with healthcare reform. And I learned about natural care also because I was having such a good time. I learned as you get older, you have to take care of yourself. And so I was getting into personal empowerment in the benefit space and also more natural living for, better living for me as a person. And that combination pretty much has continued in those 30 years you mentioned as I left Capitol Hill to become a trade association lobbyist and then a think tank advocate leader at the Cato Institute, and then on my own with small nonprofits, including several in healthcare. And then when I helped a governor run for president,
Johnson, right?
yeah, Gary Johnson in 2008 and 2012. And I was assigned to run his nonprofit during that second campaign. Um,
And that was third party, right?
it was a third party, which he was forced to do because when he was running as a Republican, he was kind of shoved off in the corner, and he didn't want to be ignored. Uh, which I guess is what happened to RFK. Um, and then, at one of the presidential conventions, I met a guy at a booth who was selling health insurance, but an alternative. And I decided then to diversify my income, and I got into the health insurance business, but in a way that doesn't sell insurance. It's an alternative, kind of like leaving a bank for a credit union. So, and then I got hired to lobby again in the health freedom space, and here I am. So that's 30 years of government affairs experience that led me to where I am now.
Awesome. I'm not sure why I thought the Ron Paul staffer, but Gary Johnson.
Well, I mean, when Paul ran in 2008, I was lobbying for a bunch of small nonprofits, many in healthcare. So, monthly gig income per client. It was fun. And Ron Paul's office helped me schedule some rooms on Capitol Hill. So I got to know the staffers in Ron Paul's office pretty well. And when he decided to run, Ron Paul did interview me. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and he had a caucus called the Liberty Caucus, and he almost hired me. His fundraiser wanted Ron Paul to hire me. So, Ron hired somebody else over me, but that was 1998. That somebody else in 2007 wanted me to staff Ron Paul in New Hampshire right before the primary. I couldn't do it. I'm not sure why, but that was nice. That twice I almost ended up working with him. Very close to his people ever since then, and he definitely is a hero. But I was the Cato Institute Government Affairs Associate Director, so that was the Libertarian think tank in 2002 through 2004. So, I had my place in the Libertarian pantheon in DC for a while. Um, and that's why Gary Johnson ran in 2012, was to give the public another Ron Paul voice so that they could hear it in stereo. Gary Johnson, the governor of New Mexico, made it into a couple debates, including the Florida debate on Fox News, where he kind of stole the show with that joke about shovel-ready jobs. His joke was, "My neighbor's dog has more shovel-ready jobs than Obama," and that actually got a huge laugh. And Gary Johnson got some prime news coverage. But then he was excluded from the polls needed to qualify for the debates. So once Gary realized he's being railroaded, he left for the Libertarian Party. So that's how that worked out. But yeah, Ron Paul is still around. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about all the babies he's helped facilitate their births, you know? I mean, that's the type of person you want, right? That's that grounded in what our future is, right? So anyways, Charlie, I'm aware that you've been into Kundalini yoga for quite a while. So can you kind of share how that happened during your experience and government and politics? And was Kundalini yoga the beginning of your true seeking, or how did you come upon it, or where would you say your true seeking journey began? Was this going back in your teens or in college or?
Well, I mean, in college, I was a frat guy, and I got into karate, and we had this 40th generation samurai guy teaching us. So already I was with some strange person from the old world, hardcore karate, no pads, doing real karate. And so I was, I guess, always attracted to cool, fringy things like that. And it got me in shape. It was kind of spiritual, like Kundalini yoga. That was during college. we would go to Nag's Head, the beach of North Carolina, in the wintertime and go punch waves. You know, wake up 3 times in the middle of the night to go out there and do that. So hardcore stuff to overcome your personal limitations. So I guess I always had that yen for that kind of thing going back to college. But I was having such a good time while a congressional staffer that as part of that personal growth to become healthier, by the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, I went to a regular yoga class at a gym, and I met some friends there. One of them said, "Go to this church to try this other style of yoga, Kundalini yoga." And I didn't like it at first because it has chanting and meditation and weird movements, not just the regular gym yoga poses that everyone knows. But then there was this white tantric event where you do paired meditations of an hour length, 6 of them in a row, with like a 10-minute break, and you stare into the other person's eyes doing meditations, sometimes with different hand positions and chanting. But that threw me for a loop. That was one of those, shake that person. It's like God grabbing you, and that I was sold. So I became a certified teacher. By the time I was a trade association lobbyist, mostly in the financial sector, mortgage brokers, title insurers, credit unions, and then by the time I was at Cato, I was teaching in DC, and then running the sadhana programs at 3 different studios. So getting up at 3 a.m. 3 times a week and running sadhana in Old Town, Georgetown, and Petworth. So that was a great balance to the stress of leading a think tank on Capitol Hill and dealing with a bunch of petty scholars. I had this other life of being a yogi, and that really just neutralized me. So you're not too hyper, not too depressed. You're always even keeled, so you can respond versus react. And ever since then, I've always done a morning Kundalini yoga practice, and that's been my trick for staying healthy and just persistent throughout all these years, no matter how much I might struggle. So I'll definitely recommend it for others if anyone wants to learn from me how to get involved with that. I recommend it.
Yeah, because I know you've done a few of the solstice gatherings, right? For those who don't know, during the solstices, there's a big gathering of Kundalini yoga teachers, but even practitioners, right? You don't have to necessarily be a certified Kundalini yoga teacher, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately that fell apart when unfortunately Yogi Bhajan, the Indian Sikh who brought this style over to America in the late 60s, and he was teaching the hippies how to get off pot and get high through yoga. And he knew politicians and actors and actresses, so he had a really good run. But he had an inner circle of women, and a few of them complained after the fact that he was a bit aggressive with them in a personal aspect that was controversial, and so a lot of people kind of banished him as a person from their life while keeping the yoga. And that happened, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And so this fantastic summer solstice program that, a couple thousand folks would attend every June 21st that week in the high desert of New Mexico near Albuquerque. Fantastic 5 days, just, amazing. It fell apart, but I think it's coming back. Um, and that's just a quirk that this style of yoga has to deal with. That its founder had some personal troubles with a few people in his inner circle, and it kind of turned a lot of folks off to him, the founder of the style of yoga. But the style of yoga itself is great, and most of us, keep doing it because we feel better by doing it than we would if we quit.
Well, just talking to you about this, I'm remembering when I started practicing Kundalini yoga back in 2010. Because hearing you, Charlie, if I, heard you correctly, you said it started with martial arts, and then from there you discovered yoga, and then you discovered Kundalini yoga, and you became a Kundalini yoga teacher. So I guess what I'm saying is like during solstice, it's an energetic time, kind of like in the early morning. So I'm trying to remember what's it called when we do the chanting in the early morning, like 4 in the morning?
Well,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah. Most folks, if they know anything about yoga or India, they know about sun salutations. With and old sayings, early bird gets the worm. So intuitively, what we're about to talk about should make sense. Um, but when you get into Kundalini yoga, they invite you to sadhana,
Yeah.
which is really hard to do because they want you to wake up at 3, take a cold shower, and
Hmm.
drive to a yoga studio, um, with the idea that you're going to capitalize on the awakening vibration of Mother Earth,
Yeah.
which happens in the Amrit Vela or ambrosial hours, the 2.5 hours between 4 and 6:30 a.m. And when you wake up that early in the dark, you actually hear the birds. The birds do wake up at that hour. They're chirping away, which is amazing because you never would know that unless you woke up at that hour. But yeah, it's a nice practice. You chant Japji, the Sikh prayer. It takes about 20 minutes. A very phonetic language, so it really stimulates your glands and meridians. Ekonkar, Satanam, Kartapuraka. I love it. And then you do a regular class, some Kriya. With the style of yoga, you have all these manuals, so you can teach any kind of workout you want. Depends what you want to work on. And then you have an hour of meditations while singing. And then you'll play a CD to help you along. Or sometimes I would have people come by for live performances, and that was awesome. And then by the time 6 o'clock rolls around, you're ready for the day. I feel great. So that's what they do in this style of yoga. Not everyone does because it's a hard habit to get into. Most folks don't do that. They just, when they get up early, do their yoga, meditation, which is what I do. I don't even get up that early anymore. I get up, 6 o'clock, get my kids to school, and I do my workout. It's not very long, and then I finish with Sat Kriya. That's my habit. So that's what I can do based on my life as a family man and parent. But that's what you can do. Sadhana means daily practice. So it doesn't have to be at 4 a.m. It can be whenever you can do it. Um,
Yeah, I
so
brought it up, Charlie, just because it being kind of similar, like a solstice, it's the idea that, electromagnetic opportunity, and the same thing with the ambrosia hours and sadhana. But I love how you brought up Sat Kriya, because I was going to say how for those, new to Kundalini yoga, how that is like one of the best practices to do to really get the full benefit. Without me talking too much, my Kundalini yoga teacher, the owner of the Yoga Village studio where I first started practicing Kundalini yoga, it kind of happens when people are attracted to it, to practice. It's kind of natural that the studio encourages you to become a teacher. Around the same time, though, I was into martial arts as well, specifically Wing Chun, and I just didn't really resonate with, some of the disciplines like no caffeine, and the fact that, oh, it's Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan, and it made me think like, well, what is just Kundalini yoga? Like, why does it have to be taught by him? But then what she suggested to me is just do Sat Kriya. And I think I may have told you before, I actually had a copper meditation chamber, and I would do Sat Kriya in it. And somehow it developed into, I got the M wave through the Institute of Heart Math, and it would measure my heart rate variability and the coherence of it. So I would learn to get into a state of high coherence. So then I didn't need that biofeedback anymore. But does this ring a bell? I mean, I had four copper mirrors. It was a chamber, and there was a circular magnet, like 18 inches above my head. And I was a cushioned platform, and there was four quartz crystals, underneath the platform, and they were in the shape of a cube octahedron. And that's because for me, I just kind of went like, I discovered this, and it was part of a spiritual awakening, and that's kind of why I quickly started the sadhana and everything else. And obviously, I haven't continued that habit, but I've done hundreds and hundreds of Kundalini yoga classes, and I'm not a certified teacher, but informally, when called, I've taught people, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the structure, starting off with the Adi mantra, Ang Namo, Guru Dev Namo. ending with the Long Time Sunshine song. So
Well, that's cool that you mentioned that South Korea in that copper chamber.
yeah.
Um, because Morley, I always forget his last name now. Morley Robbins presented on my weekly Freedom Hub health show. I have two shows a week on the importance of copper and how it's depleted by glyphosate uh, in your cells, deep inside your cells, which are a battery. And the glyphosate smothers the battery and therefore your performance as an electrical being. And I heard so much good things about copper, and the way you describe it, I've often thought of South Korea, and South Korea, you basically have your hands like this, and you're rolling your biceps towards your ears. You're on your knees. You're inhaling, and as you exhale, you're pulling in your navel point with Sut, truth, Nam, very relaxed identity. And what it does, it extends your exhale, and that slows your breath down, and it becomes easier to keep the Satnam going. And then let's visualize what's happening with energy. It's just like as Foster Gamble describes the Taurus field in his first Thrive movie. So if you're sucking in Sut, you're pulling energy from Mother Earth, right, into your first chakra. So there's the returning energy going back into you, up your spine, through all your nadis and meridians. And as you relax Nam, letting go, that's going out your 10th gate, and it's probably going around you and recycling.
Mhm.
That's my theory. And thanks to Foster Gamble's visualization for helping me understand how this thing, South Korea, might be working, because it certainly works. Um, so that's what I thought about when you described what you're doing, was
Yeah.
Foster Gamble's Taurus field.
No, I love that. And the way I've described Kundalini Yoga to a certain extent, it's like a recipe book. Like think about all the recipes in the world. There's so many different recipes, but it's all about what specifically does somebody want to work on, their digestion, their concentration, or so on. And then you do a specific recipe of mudras, body movements. A lot of Kundalini Yoga is syncing our breathing with our movements and our mudras. And like you mentioned earlier, somehow it activates certain glandular function, which then can correlate with the ethereal energy that for whatever reason has a mysterious component to it, but it's not mysterious when we feel full of energy, right? That's always what brought you to Kundalini Yoga. I think it's what brought me, when we're feeling that liberation of energy. It's like, yeah, of course it'd be nice to scientifically measure and confirm all of this, but it's kind of based on how we're feeling and how we're performing. So, and I love it too, Charlie, with what you said about the balance you'd have when you're dealing with your work, and how also equanimity is a big point, because we don't really know until we're in a very stressful situation and we reflect on where we were before we incorporated this lifestyle. So then when we're dealing with the stress, we aren't as reactive. It's natural to have equanimity. So yeah,
Yeah. And I was going to say something pretty cool, but I forgot.
it'll come back at some point. Yeah, so I mean, with your
Oh, I
truth.
know what I was going to say. This is important. Um, so for years on my weekly health show, I've had all these disruptors and innovators in health. The Morley Robbins I mentioned with the copper supplement, frequency medicine, integrative healthcare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've had some Kundalini yogis on there too, including Satbir Singh Khalsa, who does research on meditations at Harvard. So there is evidence behind this, and NIH likes him because they care about evidence, right? Not just how you feel. But I don't see how you really get healthy unless you're doing this. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if you're not meditating and working out in some way with meditation and yoga, uh, I don't see how you can get so healthy with the supplements and healthy living and running and all that. I do think the meditation, you got to stimulate your pituitary and pineal gland. I think
Mhm.
because you want to be connected to the infinite. Um, so selfishly, and just from my experience, I think a lot of folks are lacking in that aspect. They want to have true health and understanding of reality. Not everyone probably agrees with that, but I've said that a lot over the years, and I really do believe that. You know what I mean?
I resonate, Charlie, and I like you kind of touched on selfishly, but the way I see it is if we really want to be selfless, we have to be selfish about our vitality. Because how can we be selfless and truly, focus on loving others and helping others unless we're showing up as our best self by prioritizing what you're talking about, what this discussion is about. So I
Yeah,
completely
if I show up without having done this yoga, I'm not selfless. I'm not my best self. Because I think we're all so stressed and toxified by that soup that Kennedy talks about from all the poisons everywhere.
the, sm-
That
the smorgasbord of attacks from everywhere, right?
yeah. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess fat uh, flash forward to this moment. Do you see the truth movement, growing, expanding? I mean, what's it been like for you from discovering Kundalini yoga to then kind of meeting someone like me, where we kind of hit it off immediately because it was like, oh, you're into Kundalini yoga, I'm into it. I thought that was great. And then I can only imagine what it's been like for you. I mean, obviously we know about the Yogi Bhajan issue, but that's somewhat a pattern um, as well too. Uh, but I guess what I'm saying is to try to view like more freedom, more truth compared to the suppression of both.
Well,
And
that's an interesting question because like was predicted in Kundalini yoga and probably everywhere else, we're in some sort of change from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age, and the global banks or controllers are going to be cornered like tigers and are going to fight like hell to keep what they have. And the question is, how do we as yogis respond to that chaos and that situation and that opportunity? Um, and I don't think there's a clear answer, and I'm okay with that because I think we have to work on ourselves to be prepared for whatever happens. And there's probably a lot of deception and feints to throw us off. Um, and so, I believe what John Mackey at Whole Foods said when he founded conscious capitalism is true that we should all be working for good. There's no reason you can't profit from doing good. So let's, pay our bills and hopefully pay our bills with some service or good or a path that uh, is rewarding to our soul. So I've gotten into health insurance disruption, which I think is timely because if you look at the duopoly, Republicans are defending health insurance while hating Obamacare. Democrats are defending Obamacare, which is health insurance, while wanting more government involvement. Neither one of them are talking about sharing. Health sharing is the third way that I sell, and a couple million people are already into sharing, mostly realtors. And now it's being added to businesses for the benefit plans. And so to get paid commission on that is working for good, and I hope everyone can find some profit making solution in this chaotic times where you can save the world and make money. And whether it's qigong, that karate style you mentioned, tai chi or yoga, I hope everyone can have a practice that enlarges their spirit because I think there's a spiritual element in today's times that we neglect at our own peril and the peril of society. And even there, it's so binary what's going on in society. It's either the fundamentalist right wing on one side or the nihilist atheist wing on the other. And I think there's a third way that you might agree with as we work on our souls and realize the connection with our creator. How that connection occurs or how you define it is up to us personally. I don't think you have to choose the binary choices given to us in society because it's kind of like Trump versus Kamala. Are we really excited by either choice? I don't know. Probably not. Um, those of us in health freedom are probably excited about Trump's promise to have his chronic disease commission work with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think COVID has made us trust Kennedy to at least do something useful to push away that toxic soup,
Mhm.
which would really help our personal soul journey. Um, where am I going with this? Um, I would think don't worry too much about the details of the chaotic path because it's going to be chaotic and troublesome. Work on your soul, your daily practice. Make sure that you're neutral, not too hyper, not too depressed, not too reactive. Try and find some profit making thing, gig work that makes you happy about working. I guess people are really sad working in their cubicles. Um, So, but the chaos is going to happen. We know the banksters are running the show. We know there's a satanic element to it. Uh, we know that there's a lot of history that's been covered up, and it's beautiful finding out what's going on. As you learn about Tartaria and Old World, it makes it really fun to go through every town and look at those buildings. I just did it in Sandusky, Ohio. It was a thrill just to walk around and look at these old buildings and wonder what the heck is a true history. You and I know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Um,
I was going to bring it up, but there's no need to when you bring it up because I was going to say when you started describing your truth-seeking journey, you talked about the samurai from like the old world and how it's funny, like, is the old world really the future world? Like, what's going on here as we examine this? And so I'm so happy you're touching on it. And I'm sure you're comfortable with like the area you live in, right? Like people knowing about it because you live in a pretty unique area, right? You're not too far from an area that has old world buildings. I don't know if you've seen them. I've shared with you some of my lunch break videos, specifically where you're at in Virginia.
yeah, my lunch break, for those that don't know, is a really popular YouTube channel. And he goes into a lot of towns that we know around the world, and you don't have to go far to see them. Every town has a city hall and churches, and they're all old world, and it makes it so beautiful when you learn about true Earth and the lies of our authorities, telling us a story of this spinning ball in impossible space, and how all these dugout buildings um, are hiding a history that's amazing. And I think when all is said and done, if we can have those zeppelins connecting to tall buildings and giving us a travel option to go around the world or beyond the shoreline
Yeah,
for new unexplored continents that Admiral Byrd promised or beyond the pole. Uh, I want to know. I want to know what's going on, and I can't wait to see what awaits us.
I'm on the same wavelength, man. And for those that don't know what you're talking about, they're airships. Like the idea of instead of a plane that has a limitation to how far it can fly, like airships, due to uh, the density and buoyancy and the way they can travel far distances and can actually be very luxurious inside, like just like the most luxurious cruise ship, but you're cruising up in the air. So I love that you brought that up in the, impossible, because I'm happy to say, Charlie, this is episode 6 of the Truth Lab. Episode 1, I had David Weiss, Flat Earth Dave, and I didn't know who David Weiss was until you shared him with me. So maybe do you want to share a little bit about how you discovered him and why you brought him onto the Freedom Hub, and then out of, you put on 100 interviews a year, right? Something like that, a couple a week. I know you have the Freedom Hub and then the other one, like where you talk about the alternative to the health insurance. But anyways, out of all your interviews, that was the most viewed, right?
Last year, our most viewed of all time was Kevin Barrett's attack on Zionism,
Okay,
and
we'll
and
drop breadcrumbs for our viewers here to we want to keep this on YouTube, so
well, folks, if you're getting all your entertainment from YouTube, you better wake up soon because you have to go to Rumble to get a lot of useful content. And even Rumble is censoring a bit now, and so you have to know about other platforms eventually, like Odyssey or Library or BitChute. BitChute's pretty good.
You think
But
about
yeah,
with this, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but with X, with the spaces, have you kind of really blew up with Trump and Elon and other people. And Candace Owens just got like, I don't think deplatformed, but something happened. She got demonetized. I mean, it was just a matter of time. But then she made an announcement about that on X yesterday. So I kind of thought that was interesting because I look at people like Don Trump Jr., Dan Bongino, that a while ago they transitioned to Rumble.
yeah, and thank goodness for X. That's the best platform right now. And Witsit, Witsit gets it. At Witsit gets it. As one of my favorite X channels. He had a what do you call it, Spaces yesterday, where they talked about both these issues in tandem. And yeah, that's what I tried to do in my Thursday weekly show is push the envelope on acceptable topics and guests. Um, because, as Voltaire apparently did not say, to find out who controls, think of who you cannot discuss. Uh, it would be nice to have someone verify that quote because it makes sense, whoever said it.
And something
Um,
to criticize too. So like something you can't. If you want to see who rules over you, see who you can't criticize.
yeah, that's what I just said in a different phrase.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to discuss. I want to discuss that which cannot be discussed because I think we are in a great awakening where the curtain is being pulled back, and transparency is important. Censorship is totalitarian, and if we are going to have free speech, free speech protections are not there for popular speech; they're there for speech that you don't want to hear. Um, and those are the most popular recordings and shows. People want to talk about the banksters and the globalists who control and limit our decisions and our possibilities. And they want to get rid of those limitations. And they want to find out who's behind those limitations, who they are. So that's a recurring topic and theme. And I've had lots of controversial shows on that. And then people want to know what the reality is with our Earth. What are the planets and stars, and what is space, and why does NASA's CGI videos have so many problems with them, and what does it mean? Why is there a treaty that prohibits independent exploration of Antarctica, and why are our so-called enemies all co-signers of that treaty, and why has it lasted from the 1950s until now? Um, were they hiding in Antarctica? So yeah, if there's censorship, I want to know why. I want to discuss it, and I love the fact that everyone else does too. And so if you're a pathfinder or a trailblazer on truth, you're going to get arrows, and first they ignore you, then they denigrate you, then they attack you, then you win. That goes for truthers and truth seeking. Um, and I just thank the Lord that I'm in a position where I can have some notoriety for platforming controversial figures, to have the discussions that folks want to have. And then, that's the Thursday show. The health show is Wednesday. That's more nuts and bolts. And that's a lot of friends of mine making money doing good, improving the health market. And then I'm the lobbyist for the world's oldest health freedom organization, National Health Federation. And we have monthly Zooms that folks can join to learn. And I'm the lead lobbyist right now against the wireless mesh. Every week I'm lobbying with a national coalition against a bunch of bills telecom is pushing through Congress to force antennas outside your bedroom and classroom and local parks that are going to spy on you, fry you, and coerce you in a digital trap like a CCP social credit score. It's
15,
coming, folks.
right? 15-minute city. If you like what we're seeing happening in the UK and Europe, if you criticized the government, then you can't leave, or there goes your central bank digital currency. I mean, I can't accept that, Charlie. I mean, I think about posterity. I think about your children. You're a father. I mean, it's unacceptable. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people did buy what was attempted to be sold to all of us in 2020, but I think we didn't reach that tipping point, where
It
we
depends how you define that, because I know you and I both know that there are people who say that to make change, you only need like a certain number or percentage.
well,
You
the
don't need a majority.
Maharishi effect or hundredth monkey, 1%. Well, look at the American Revolution. What 3% of the colonists actually did that, right? I mean, 3%. Even though the more we study the old world, certain stuff isn't adding up. But
Yeah, that's strange, the old world, because
yeah.
you know I became a libertarian while working as a Republican in Congress, and so I started reading all those tomes by all these fantastic authors like Rothbard. He's the best. And then older authors, and then classics from 100 years ago, like Theodore Dreiser and Sinclair Lewis and Joseph Conrad, and then H.L. Mencken, the great social critic from the turn of the century in Baltimore, who wrote about those writers and about the politicians and the times. And then you go back to de Tocqueville and even older writers, and Jefferson, that great wisdom lover who did run our country for a while, not without controversy or succumbing to Maya. He went for embargo on trade, and not sure that worked. But when you contrast the libertarian history and the Austrian economics school and that history, and even history itself going way back, and then you contemplate the old world theory that there's so much in history that is lies, and there's so much that was literally buried by floods. There's so much we don't know. And it's going to take a while to figure out how to piece together our accurate history.
Mhm. Well, like I mentioned, Charlie, you had a Jaren on, and I brought up just trying to piece together the last 100 years because, especially with World War II, even World War One, we actually have videos, and it's tough because of AI now and doctoring things and such. But at least from there, even if it's just trying, because I guess some people say it's like we'll never know the truth about 9/11, but I would deduce that there's certain things I think we can agree on when it comes to truth seekers about that, and I eventually start seeing, I can't help it with permaculture, the pattern recognition of seeing the same group that's been behind everything, whether it's World War One or World War Two or JFK's assassination and 9/11, COVID. It's like, and for me, that's what makes it a little more interesting to really put the puzzle pieces together that way, to try to have what you're saying, an accurate perception or understanding of history, but at least the last 100 years. And then from there, who knows what we can discover, but the truth is history is history, it's like what matters is now, because as you know, we can have the best visions of the future, but the only thing that's real is right now, this present moment. So trying to cultivate as much mindfulness and empowerment, because in this moment, people can be worried and afraid and have an over active nervous system and lots of cortisol, or other people can truly be trying to be peaceful and realizing the Maharishi effect, where if we just have a small percentage of us that are trying to coordinate our inner peace and our mindfulness, who knows what's possible here, and to try to keep an aspect of mystery to what we call this material physical world, that it may be a lot more spiritual and mental than, a lot of us have grown up believing. Right.
I kind of agree with that, in that we definitely have to work on ourselves and I think you would agree that the best way to do that at its core is yoga and meditation. Uh, we, I like Kundalini yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan. I think where he got his style, I think probably came from a mix of a regular yoga teacher back in India in the 60s and this Sikh leader, and he combined the two things. And then he made up a lot of it along the way, which is fine. I mean, as a libertarian, that's what entrepreneurs do. They repackage stuff that better meets consumer demand. A lot of purists or whatever might criticize that because there is an older style of Kundalini yoga that's more in the Hindu tradition. And what Yogi Bhajan created, I think, really was a curated style of his own that was fit for the times. And he just created such a huge universe of optional workouts, like you said, that it really is a fantastic thing he did. And so God bless him, I say, entrepreneur. He repackaged some old stuff into this incredible school that works for the times.
Yeah.
But I would disagree in that you might agree with me. We have to investigate history because the future might require some of that old world technology and vibration.
Well, no, I completely agree. What I'm trying to say, that's it. Like, as we try to uncover an accurate history, we discover things like free energy. We discover things like unity.
And architecture.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, a civilization that contributes to the individual as much as the individual contributes to the civilization, and like
Yeah.
that balance, that harmony between civilization with nature, with the universe, whether one, geocentric, heliocentric, but it's really interesting. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's like we uncover the truth of the past, but then we realize like now is how we are the bridge, and we just have to reach that critical mass of like we were talking before we started recording, just not being hypnotized. I mean, we could say, I think it was what Dr. Malone who you had on, or we had on before during the health freedom brainstorming. He kind of popularized on Joe Rogan the phrase mass formation.
Or psychosis.
Exactly. So that's, so it wasn't just applied to that, whatever we call it, the pandemic, scandemic, but applied to, more, because one could say it even applies to government. And that's kind of what I've realized through Larkin Rose and the Jones Plantation and stateless societies. And that's what the old world, to a certain extent, was, from my understanding. But then we get into things like, well, what exactly happened? Such a powerful, unified kingdom, civilization, where'd it go?
Yeah.
You can't really travel anywhere without seeing these old world buildings. And then it's sad to look into how many were destroyed, not just through World War II and World War One, but actually, Charlie, I mean, you may have come, I'm not trying to take the floor from you, but I had a friend, and it all connected to health freedom, because you may recall in 2022 when there was the big health freedom rally in Washington, D.C. I think
Yeah, I was there.
well, you were there, and I just interviewed Deepak. I don't know if you know about him. He's like the musical genius behind Plandemic, the musical that's coming out on October 10th. So he's who I just interviewed, and he's going to the join or the resistance happening, I think September 29th. So
Mm-hmm.
second occurrence since back then. But anyways, because I was born in Canada and I actually became a lobbyist, NHF hired me to be a lobbyist for the state of Florida in 2022. So I was really trying to, just simulate everything I was learning from you. And then I was studying Canadian politics. And then there was the big trucker situation. So one of my friends, you may know him, his name's Matt Belair. I interviewed him like 4 years ago about peak performance and self-actualization. He's been with Shaolin monks, and He's an incredible athlete. He's been a coach for high-level athletes, maybe even some Olympians. And he went through a whole transformation of like the New Age to Christian when he really started looking into the truth about, the deception with space and where we live and World War II. But anyways, I'm telling you this because he was live streaming in Ottawa, and I was born in Ontario, so like same province, and he's like research Tartaria. So I had never heard about Tartaria until that moment. And he had no idea the chain reaction that set off because then I just took a deep dive and I didn't even look into flat earth until you suggested it because of Flat Earth Dave being your most viewed show last year. So it's really interesting the way I kind of see it. And then for me, the most unique building in my area is the University of Tampa, which allegedly in 1890 was a 511 room hotel, 500 plus room hotel, the first all electric hotel in Florida. And there's no photos of its construction. And I actually went there. And when I was driving there back in May, I called Matt because I hadn't spoken with Matt for like 4 years since I interviewed him. Because I really wanted him to know when he on the live stream said, look into Tartaria, how much of a paradigm shift that was and how one thing led to another. And during that time, that's when he suggested I watch the World War II documentary, the 12-hour one. And I had just watched that in July. So it's kind of like the truth needs to be digested in phases. It can really be disruptive to our worldview, when it's a little too much. But I just thought I'd share that just because I'm grateful for how National Health Federation brought you and I together and for your time today and everything you're sharing. And I really appreciate you being such a passionate, truth seeker.
Likewise, Alex. And if folks don't know, you're the Moringa man, and you're a food tour entrepreneur down there in Florida, and great podcaster
Don't forget realtor.
and realtor. Yeah,
Many hats,
yeah. So anybody that wants to upgrade from Obamacare, don't forget it has networks. What does that mean? It means if you got cancer or heart disease, you can't go to the doctor or hospital that you want to. You have to choose from a list and network. And when you join our sharing community, you let our concierge hold your hand to shop for well-priced drugs or tests or specialists. You can go wherever you want worldwide. And I don't know about you, Alex, but if I got cancer, I'm going to Tijuana. They have Verita Life and Hope for Cancer, where they do a lot of juicing, colonics, cryotherapy, and it's just like if you had a wrecked car. It's time to purge and clean yourself, young man. No oncology for me. But if you want that option, you got to upgrade from Obamacare to sharing, and I'm the guy to go to. Forbes featured how we combine sharing with health savings accounts, the best tool to build your nest egg for retirement, make it into a cash patient. Join our monthly Zoom for Health Freedom. I need your help to stop the wireless mesh that's going to fry us, spy on us, and coerce our behavior in a big smart city. And there are other health freedom issues that we may need a Hail Mary Trump victory to hire RFK to actually do something in DC that's really useful. But meanwhile, you and I think, are on the same page. We have to work on ourselves and become neutral spiritual beings. And maybe we have to do that first before we can even get the truth of our past and our future potential, so that we can even use the vibratory tools they had in the lost civilization. Or even take on the bankster globalists who have taken over this world and have got everyone brainwashed and sheep like to do their bidding in the robotic jobs, living off Soma in this brave new world.
Hearing you say this, Charlie, what are your thoughts on diplomacy? Because when we focus domestically, we're not, thinking abroad, because Dave brought up how he thinks population is lower than what we're told, 8 billion people. But as a rough estimate, I normally say as Americans, we're 5% of the human family. So when I visualize world peace, it's done through diplomacy. So is there anybody you are in contact with regarding that, or do you have any thoughts about that? Because sometimes if we're so, focused domestically, um, and then I also get into things because like looking in the Constitution about the border and border security, and if we're going to really try to reflect our founding fathers with what the Constitution provides us with, it's like, you get what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, it doesn't talk about border security, but that's such a huge issue, not just here in our country, but it's happening all throughout Europe. Obviously, I was born in Canada. There's quite the situation there as well, too. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to like when I really try to do things like you talk about a think tank. It's like how can enough of us, even a small group, like I was talking about this last week with Foster Gamble, a small group of us are just visualizing the outcome of, peace on earth, the truth prevailing. And then we kind of reverse engineer to right now. Because when we're really working with the creator and creation, we don't have to know how something's going to happen. It's just up to us to like visualize it happening and to have that elevated emotion as if it is happening, to really be that empowered creator, co-creators that we are. So it's funny because before I joined with National Health Federation, you may know this, I took the FSOT, the Foreign Service Officer test in 2019, and I continue to stay somewhat on, I just signed up actually for a webinar that's in a couple weeks from now, just because to learn about some of the updates, with the whole, foreign service and everything, because I'm anticipating when I was looking into in 2019, it was because the administration we had inspired me to really want to give back. And then somehow I didn't make it to the oral part of the FSOT, but it's very challenging. I mean, I think there's just a 30 to 40% pass rate, but I did a lot of studying for it, and I was geared for the economic cone because what I've done with Moringa Man and building up relationships overseas, I kind of saw the value of diplomacy through economics. And then even what certain missionary groups do with moringa, trying to help like very impoverished people improve their quality of life with the moringa tree and other, similar plants like that. So I'm not trying to digress. I'm just trying to focus, on solutions and a little thinking outside the box because you're obviously so passionate about, whatever we want to call it, government, politics, legislation here, but then to sometimes reflect on, I guess, this kind of bigger picture, but then there's even a bigger picture than that. But do you see value in diplomacy and this what I'm talking about, or does it make sense what I'm saying about the Constitution doesn't really say anything about we're supposed to have a secure border?
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. So I think the Constitution uh, s- still provides the roadmap to world peace because it basically is a libertarian document. It, um, it defines and enumerates in Article 1, Section 8 what the feds can do. It reserves under the 10th Amendment to the states every other any other power that folks would want a government to do. And so that limitation, if it were respected, would shrink DC. And to shrink DC, you basically have to end the interventions both abroad and at home. Well, if you end interventions abroad, that means you're bringing the troops home. You're replacing soldiers with diplomats. And even more important than that, I think, is what you said about Moringa and economic diplomacy. I think businessmen are our best diplomats, or even nonprofit charitable work, missionary work, and study abroad. Um, and then, um, as far as the border goes, no, there's no border security power in the Constitution. The founders didn't even envision border security. Um, it's something that was brought along by law in the post Civil War Congress. They started limiting who can come here if you have a communicable disease, In the 1890s, they banned Chinese, I guess because of competition out west with the workforce. And then there was a 1920s, I think, big immigration ban, and then another one in the 1960s. Um, Libertarians, I'm going to couch this in a second, have often said that if you're worried about immigration, stop the welfare that might attract them, which is good enough. Stop the interventions overseas that create terrorists that might come through the border and hurt us. Um, and there was one other indirect solution that would make you be concerned less with the border. Now, when it comes to population demographics and the obvious intent by the global banksters to flood Western governments, Western cultures with foreigners who don't share our values, yeah, then you got to tighten up at the border a bit, I think. So there might be a short-term need to sacrifice libertarian ideals just to save our culture. But I think eventually we can return to the constitutional path, which is, well, don't have the welfare that might attract anyone coming here for welfare, if that's your concern. If you're, oh no, the third thing, if you're worried about losing domestic jobs to foreigners, um, I say cut taxes to create more jobs, and stop the Fed inflation that's creating boom bust cycles, that is creating malinvestment where certain industries shouldn't be getting so much money through the easy money, and that would give us a more stable economy. And by the way, a lot of folks agree with me that a simple fix to the global bankster problem is just to end the Fed. If you know, if you don't give them a central bank with which to control corporate America through the power over the purse and interest rates and the bond market, then you're already there restoring national sovereignty right there. So there are some strong. In fact, you could just repeal 1913, repeal the Fed, repeal the income tax, and repeal direct election of senators. Return that function to the state legislatures. So you re-empower the states. Um, so that's my thinking on what needs to be done to get to that future. Working yourself, um, separate, secede from global institutions, whether it's the UN or the Fed, and then you'll see culture recover and be able to set itself right to be ready for whatever awaits us from the old world, so we can have that bright future. And then work on yourself. That's my prescription.
Thank you. And hearing you say that made me think of corporatocracy. So you're saying ending the Fed or getting rid of it would get rid of corporatocracy? Because I kind of view it like sometimes when we're so passionate about advocacy and making a difference, but then we look at corporatocracy being like above government, or it kind of fluctuates. You get what I'm saying? I mean, because we all know about captured agencies and things like that. But I guess the term corporatocracy could be used interchangeably with globalism. I mean,
Well, whether you have globalism or even nationalism, the corporates are going to run the government, no matter how small you make it. So, my thinking, and I think the thinking of a lot of of libertarians, is that if you did cut off the spigot, the central bank, if you did cut off the revenue by abolishing the income tax and the IRS, and restore state discretion on senatorial election, you're going to have less government, because you have to, unless you want to go into more debt. Because if you don't have as much income tax revenue coming in, you don't have as much government that's being funded. And so, and if you have RFK litigating against the corporate capture by the for the regulations, you're going to lessen DC as a playground for the rich and the powerful and the BlackRock adjacent. And you want to send more government to the states, so that if corporations are going to play games, let them do it in the 50 state capitals. It'll be harder for them to capture government when it's closer to us. So it'll even the playing field a bit. Still won't be that even. They're going to control state governments, but at least they won't control DC as much. And that to me is more dangerous for liberty than if they mess around in the states. Because then you have a few states that are honest and ethical and will remain as a sanctuary from the dangerous states. So that's Montesquieu. Montesquieu is to divide government.
Okay. Is,
To me, that's an important.
is there a coordinated effort right now that you're aware of people actively trying to advocate for this?
Well, that was one of my NHF campaigns.
Yeah,
Remember my Restore Trust in Authorities campaign?
vaguely. Yeah.
Um, I didn't want to remember. I made fun of my campaign because it was cynical. I have no interest in restoring trust in health authorities. But how you restore trust is by Montesquieu, dividing government. So with FDA, FDA merely duplicates Underwriter's Laboratory. You don't need a bureaucracy to judge the safety and effectiveness of any service or product. That stuff exists in the private sector. Underwriter's Laboratory does that. Abolish the FDA. Milton Friedman said to do that. CDC duplicates state health departments.
Yeah.
Duplication. Gone. NIH duplicates university research. Gone. Medicare duplicates Medicaid. Gone.
Yeah.
That's in that campaign. That you got to empty DC and devolve it to the states where it can where bureaucracy and kleptocracy can be more easily controlled and limited and opposed.
So what do you think that campaign needs to be successful? Obviously a groundswell of support, but I mean, how does that happen? Just
I need the influencers you mentioned earlier to help us because
that's
our we're
yeah.
sort of like treading water, a few dozen showing up every month, um, and then
Have you brought this up in the recent Health Freedom monthly Zooms?
no, I mean I can't. I mean every month. I mean we're doing too many things. Right now we're playing defense. I mean there's a bunch of bills that are about to be passed into law that are going to put antennas outside your bedroom.
I've been
And
hearing that though for a while, Charlie. I mean, I feel like I mean, I don't think right outside my bedroom. I mean, I've been seeing how some street lights actually have 5G in them,
Mhm.
but because I understand they're cell towers, but and some people have the smart meters. I mean, I don't, you know, how could someone put something on my roof without my consent?
Well, not on your roof, but it'll be in the public right of way.
Yeah.
So if the fiber isn't being dug to someone's neighborhood near you in Florida, there's nothing stopping your local government from approving a permit by Verizon to put
Yeah.
5G small cells on every other street lamp in the public right of way. So that's what's going to happen between federal bills and state bills. And so, it's a long conversation, but there's bills that have passed the House and are creeping towards passage in the Senate and could be inserted into the defense bill, a must pass bill. Amendments that would result in unlimited addition of antennas on existing cell towers, which is going to increase the ambient radiation that you're going to face. And 30% of us are already sensitive to this stuff, 5% severely. So it's biological, so you don't feel it. So when it hits you, it's going to be too late. You're not going to know it's happening. Um, the build out has been going on,
I'm grabbing,
and
see the electrosmog meter.
yeah, and it's going to happen in the parks. The defense mill has amendments that are going to put antenna deployment in all the parks near you. That's passed the House, and it's passed the committee in the Senate. If it gets stuck into a giant defense bill that has to pass, that's now law. So that's definitely potentially real. And the same with the farms. The farm bill has provisions to flood our farms with transmitters, sensors, and antennas. So it's a mesh and it's cumulative. So, not every local government has an ordinance keeping towers set back a certain distance from your bedroom or a kid's classroom. And they're coming in fast and furious on classrooms across the country right now.
I
So,
you bringing this up because like technically I live in an unincorporated area, so that means we're under the jurisdiction of the county, but then I'm right next to Dunedin, and and that's a city government. So it's interesting for people tuning in when they listen to this to kind of realize, like, do they live in a city where they can try to network and influence their city, commissioners, or is it a county commissioner thing, right?
The same dynamic, though. Whether a county or city, both jurisdictions are pressured by telecom to approve permits under the threat of lawsuits. And most local politicians will tell you they think that their hands are tied. So the the time is now to join this movement against the wireless mesh because these bills are probably going to pass. So that's why I said that's the priority is defense. We got to stop this. There are offensive programs, like I mentioned, with devolution of bureaucracies or a better vaccine informed consent bill. But those aren't crisis matters. Those are long term campaigns. You have to play defense because if we stop it, we stop it. That's great. But if we don't lobby, it's going to be easier for them to pass it because most politicians don't have a clue about the danger of the wireless mesh.
Well, Charlie, I know
Utterly clueless.
we're running out of time, but when you bring up defense, I can't help to think what attracted me to Wing Chun martial arts was simultaneous defense and offense. Do you see somehow a way of that happening?
Well, there's a bit of that. I mean, there is something we support, fiber and cable. So we don't want to seem like we're Luddites with these politicians, and we say we all have cell phones. There's a proper place for a cell tower, you know, uh, far away from your neighborhoods. 4G broadcast 10 miles, so you don't need it close to your house to work. So we're fine with that. So that's offense, and then there's bills that we now have in Congress to restore power for local governments to decide where to locate antennas. That's offense. Um, and and then just the opportunity to use the crisis to educate folks on how to mitigate their own houses, maybe to restore the role of Ethernet in someone's house, use the crisis to educate folks how they can get healthy. Because this is a silent killer. You don't feel wireless injury until it's too late. It's called biological, it's not thermal. Thermal is a feeling of heat. Um, that's how the FCC judges danger. If the cell phone isn't heating you, it's not dangerous. But the EPA decades ago found that the danger is biological. It agitates your cells internally without feeling it. Um,
It's funny, I'm actually
so
getting a call from my friend John, who's a commissioner who's running for mayor. So I'm definitely going to call him back. But it's all synchronicity as you're talking about this, and it's what we have to do, man. I mean, I was just thinking, Charlie, I was trying to play offense. I pretty sure I was coordinating with you when I spoke at my Pinellas County legislation delegation, and I brought up uh, how the state legislature could call on Congress in sync or synergy with other state legislatures to strike this like paragraph of law from the 1986 Vaccine Child like Injury Act that would restore civil suit liability. And I just kind of lost momentum, I because of you, I got the encouragement. I booked appointments with staffers for like Marco Rubio, Congress critters. I shared the documents with them, how this had happened in Washington, Oregon, Minnesota. Del Bigtree was talking about this, I think, in 2018, and so back then, I didn't think there was the groundswell like there was in 2021 when people started, waking up to this. But that's an example of offense that I was personally, trying to do, and I had a lot of energy, but then eventually I just kind of lost some momentum with it, as I'm sure you can relate to sometimes with this stuff. So, but man, we could just talk forever, couldn't we?
yeah,
we gotta do stuff. So I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm trying to think about how to best wrap this up. I mean, I don't know if you want to put forth a prediction. I mean, obviously, I hate to buy into the two-party system, as I think you do as well, but I think we could agree that somehow if the Senate flips, I mean, we're really close, right? Right now in Congress with the Senate being split, right? 50-50. And then
Well, I'm
the House is what.
I think it matters less than I used to because Republicans are rhinos and are controlled by the global banksters just as soundly as the Democrats are. And there's only a few good Congress critters, anyways. Republicans are worse than Democrats on the wireless issue and the pesticide issue. They're better than Democrats on the vaccine issue um, and some other issues. Maybe they want to spend a little less, but maybe not so. Maybe they want to cut taxes a bit, but not substantially enough. Um, Maybe now Republicans want to have less war, which is useful. I think it's important to visualize RFK as the Chronic Disease Commission vetter, to vet whatever they come up with to really disgorge the regulatory capture that is harming us from the toxins in the air, water, land, food, and medicine. Also, to visualize the continued maturation of humanity to care more about issues that matter, so that we could have maybe a return of the old world technology to give us a better life,
Yes.
to visualize more meditation so folks can be less stressed and annoying and more useful. So those are the things I want to end on is the visualization that I think we need to have um, so that we're neutral and productive no matter what happens externally in the big stage that's being manipulated by the powers that be, whoever they are or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely, folks, selfishly, contact me to upgrade from Obamacare, join my Health Freedom lobbying, and watch Alex's podcast because you really are platforming some excellent content, my friend.
Well, thank you, Charlie. And like I said, I mean, you're definitely part of my truth-seeking journey. That's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to explore your unique truth-seeking journey. And I commend you for uh, everything you're doing. I really do, man. And I do miss working, closely with you like we were when we kind of, spearheaded the whole monthly Zoom and you would make stuff happen, get Congress critters to join our meeting and state legislatures and we were pushing the envelope. We were, but hey, at least we can continue to stay in touch and remember everybody do the Sat Kriya. The Sat Kriya. I'm wearing my jacket. It's not the easiest to do, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna be doing that a little bit more.
Or just search Kundalini yoga class near you. It's best to learn this in a class, and because it's a little different, it's hard to get used to. So it's easier when you're with others.
Have you considered having, are there videos of you, Charlie, on YouTube doing like Sat Kriya for beginners or anything like that?
No, but I thought about doing it because I've got an excellent Korea that I designed. I think you're not supposed to do that, but I did to combat lower back spasms, which was something I was facing over the years.
Cool.
Um, so it's a collection of exercises that really strengthen the back. And I added some large muscle group exercises to make it more worthwhile. So, they say Yogi Bhajan said to stimulate your third chakra every day. So it's got stretch pose in there with Breath of Fire. It's got yoga push-ups, which is from the Korea for the aura. Um, it's got the frogs, which if you do was it 108 every day, you never get sick. I don't do 108. But it's a collection of asanas that I assembled for a kriya for the lower back, and then I finished with sat kriya for my meditation.
Well, just to hammer in for everybody to simplify, we're in the age of information. A lot of us go through information overload, sensory overload. And Kundalini Yoga is a powerful, relevant, even ancient technology to help combat this information overload, sensory overload. So we can be the peace and change the world through changing ourselves. But I could see that, Charlie, like in your emails or something, you could always have like a link that, hey, here's a Sakriya or something as you're, promoting the health solutions that you're a part of. So, um,
I have to find a name for it.
yeah. Well, I know you have a beautiful family to spend time with, so I really appreciate your time today and joining me in the Truth Lab. Hope you had a lot of fun. I
I
did.
did. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome, Charlie. All right. Until next time, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye.